Hello, hello, beautiful people in the world of words. I have spent 30 minutes recording myself, writing a daily blog live, and sharing the screen and trying to explain my thinking in real time as to what I was doing to show people what it's like to write a daily blog in real time, only to realize after hitting end on the YouTube stream that my screen was not recording. It was blacked out. And I tried it again. And of course, the second time it worked immediately and without any hitch. So I will have to do that again, but not now. Because what I realized while writing a daily blog live and trying to explain it in real time is that there's only so much you can do in explaining your thinking about writing as you are writing while you are writing. So I think that in the original live stream, I also did an explanation. So I did a little bit of an explanation, a breakdown. I ran through the post again after I finished it, because obviously I could not explain everything in real time. When you write, mostly you sit there and you think and you write. And of course, you cannot have too long periods of just sitting there and thinking, because that is a hell of a boring live stream, but you also can't be talking all the time. So I'm still trying to figure out how that would work. And of course, mostly I'm trying to figure out if people are interested in learning this kind of thing and maybe also paying for it. So now what I've decided to do with this little follow-up live stream, where hopefully the screen sharing will once again actually function, is that I would like to do a breakdown of the post that I wrote just now and explained. Because again, I figured I might have to do that in hindsight anyway if I'm trying to explain it to people. And so now, okay, yeah, I can see it works. If I jump over there quickly, I was like, maybe I should do separate daily blog teardowns and explain the posts in hindsight. Not long after I wrote them, but yeah, either right after or the next day. So that's what we're going to do right now. So let me just quickly run through this post, which started as a note on Substack, which was basically about when you don't know how to continue with a project, maybe just let it sit. And maybe the answer of what's the next obvious step will come to you in your sleep from your subconscious. And then you will save time by not spending a lot of time thinking about it and trying to force your way to finding out the next step. So this was the idea of the piece. And of course, Substack notes don't have headlines. So the thing I was thinking about is a headline. Originally, I chose "Comes time, comes counsel." Kommt Zeit, kommt Rat is a German saying. And so I chose originally. But then someone pointed out to me that they really like this phrase, "Your brain is not a pressure cooker," which happened sort of towards the end of the note. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can work with that. And it's a good visual image. So I started with, "Your brain is not a pressure cooker." That is TBD. Headlines are always TBD when I add them. I usually try to add one before I write the blog, but here we go. And another thing I don't always do is the Seth Godin style, which is basically continuing from the headline to the piece, pretending the headline is the first sentence of the piece, which I think is actually kind of a genius strategy in terms of grabbing the reader's attention. And you are already reading, you're already in the piece by the time you read the headline. The headline is not something separate from the piece that makes you click on it and try to get into the piece. So it's actually quite, it has to do both jobs in some cases, right? But it's quite genius. So your brain is not a pressure cooker. It can't churn out genius in a vacuum. So this was just the next line in the original note that I had. So yes, this was started from a draft, right? Just for clarity. Your brain is not a pressure cooker. It can't churn out genius in a vacuum. Then I felt I had to spend a bit more time on this image. Sometimes you have to lift the lid and let it breathe. Okay, so far so good. We have a visual image here. Now I can get into the logic of the piece and I can explain the image. Okay, I feel like I've given you enough here that is interesting, that will make you think, but not, just explain the whole thing with the image. And so then I just talked about how I came to this realization. Basically, here's a sequence of events that played out a lot for me. I make a to-do list for my day. I think I want to push a project forward. I realize I don't know what's the exact next step for that project. And then I conclude I should allot more time to this project today because I need to think it through, make a decision on what's next, and then I have to do the work. And then I said, this is wrong. So most of the time, this is the wrong approach. So this is where I realized, actually, maybe I'm just taking the wrong stance on this here. And so then I try to, so this is sort of the problem that commonly happens. right? Because obviously when you say, oh, I need to think about the project and decide on what to do and then do the work, that's a lot more than just doing something where you already know what the next step is. And that's actually the alternative I'm suggesting. So actually, I'd be better off skipping project X for the day and doing something else. Why? Because there's a high chance that in the meantime, my subconscious will figure out the next step automatically. Comes time, comes counsel, we say in Germany. So this is sort of adding a visual for the solution, not just the problem, right? So we had the pressure cooker as the image for the problem. This saying, this quote makes the solution itself memorable. Comes time, comes counsel. If I wake up the next morning with a strong gut feeling on where to take Project X, then not only can I dive right into the actual work, I've also saved myself a lot of thinking just to think. And I got lucky with this piece. I don't always remember multiple phrases or like blog post titles that I've written before. But in this case, I remembered actually 3 of them, I think. Yeah, thinking just to think, let's continue on Monday, and add time, add relaxation. I usually add links at the end, but in this case, I got lucky because, yeah, the stuff I remembered happened to be headlines of articles that I've written before. So yes, so I've sort of explained the solution, and then I say, if I wake up the next morning, then maybe I know, oh yeah, Project X, the next step actually should be this. And then I can just put that next step on my to-do list and I can start doing the work right away, right? But what if that's not the case, right? Like what if I don't know the next day? We'll get to that. So this is the takeaway for the reader, and I'm speaking to the reader directly. So I gave this its own space visually, right? If you have trouble picking a direction for a project, just let it sit. Take a day or 2 or 3. Let's continue on Monday can be a perfectly productive response to an obstacle. Actually, I need to delete this comma, I think, because it's like a dialogue phrase. Let's continue on Monday. Let's continue on Monday can be a perfectly productive. Yeah, this is better because it's not clear that it's dialogue. It flows better that way. Okay, so now I'm telling the reader, you should do this too. Just give it a try. And then I say, sure, there are situations where you have to pull through. So now I'm getting back to, okay, if I don't have it the next morning, maybe the next day I will have to sit and do the thinking. There's not always the option to just postpone something, but most of the time there is. Sure, there are situations where you have to pull through, but whenever possible, add time, add relaxation. That happened to be another one of my phrases, so I got lucky in being able to link something here. Give yourself the gift of patience. Let the path unfold in front of you, put one foot in front of the other, and when you run into a wall, remember that, unlike a pot on a stove, you can always just let it sit. So I'm not 100% happy with this triple here, because what I originally had was, remember, when you run into a wall, remember that you can always just let it sit. And I usually don't use parentheses. I try to avoid them, because you can either delete what's in the parentheses because it's not that important, or you delete the parentheses because what you're saying is actually important. But in this case, I think it made for a nice, nice image, because there's a double image here, which is you run into a wall, you can always just sit. So you can sit down in front of the wall, you can lean against the wall, and you can relax for a bit and just wait and until some epiphany comes to you. Or when you run into a wall, you can always just let it sit. You can let the wall itself sit, and let the wall be an obstacle, and just kind of go about your day. But then I wanted to tie it back to the beginning, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to have this pressure cooker headline if I would not somehow bring it back to this pressure cooker metaphor at the end. Maybe I would have gone with the comes time, comes counsel headline in this case, right? But I was like, oh, actually, when you run into a wall, remember that unlike a pot on the stove, you can always just let it sit. So the pot cannot keep sitting on the stove, the pressure cooker, because otherwise, it's going to blow up. So I was like, okay, that's actually a nice way to tie it back. But now I'm not 100% sure, because it almost feels like it's a bit much. Let the path unfold in front of you, put one foot in front of the other. And when you run into a wall, remember that, unlike a pot on a stove, you can always just let it sit. You can always just sit. When you run into a wall, remember that, unlike a pot on a stove, you can always just sit. Maybe I need to remove those, yeah. Because then I'm also just I'm just repeating that phrase. But like when it's a core phrase, I try to repeat it sometimes, like the takeaway message. Remember that, unlike one of you can always just let it sit. You can always let it sit. You can always just sit. You can always just let it sit. Unlike a pot on stove, you can always just let it sit. I will keep the original, and yeah, it's fine. It's a daily blog, and daily blogs don't have to be perfect. Yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I think that's it in terms of breakdown so far. I hope this was somewhat interesting and you were able to follow along. I would probably recommend, yeah, maybe reading the piece in one go first, and then maybe going through the breakdown. Maybe that helps. Maybe it helps also in real time. Yeah, but in any case, I'm curious to your feedback. If you were to learn how to write a daily blog, what kind of help, what kind of feedback, what kind of insights would you want? And if not, I will see you around the writing blog. Peace.